This is an exemplar video for the GCSE Media Studies Component 1, Exploring the Media. This is an exemplar response to the mock paper that was given with the assessment materials, as no exams have been done yet in this series. This is an hour and a half exam, 1 hour 30 minutes. Additional materials. You will be provided with an unannotated copy of the set products for this component in the examination for use with Section A. In other words, you'll be given the same products you were given in class by me, but without your notes. Instruction to candidates. Use black ink or black ballpoint pen. Do not use gel pen. Do not use correction fluid. Answers to all questions must be written in the answer book. Write your name, centre number and candidate number in the spaces at the top of the page. At the end of the examination, the answer book must be handed in to the invigilator. Information for candidates. The allocation of marks is given at the end of each question or part question. The number of marks indicates the length of response required. You are advised to spend approximately 55 minutes on Section A, including 10 minutes to study the print-based resource and approximately 35 minutes on Section B. You should use relevant subject-specific terminology and relevant theories where appropriate. Question 2B requires an extended response. You will be assessed on the quality of your written response, including the ability to construct and develop a sustained line of reasoning which is coherent, relevant, substantiated, and logically structured. Question 4D provides an opportunity to draw together knowledge and understanding from across the full course of study. You will be rewarded for drawing together knowledge and understanding of different areas of the theoretical framework and media contexts. Section A. Exploring media language and representation. Answer all parts of questions 1 and 2. Media language. Question 1 is based on the 1950s advertisement for Quality Street from the set products. Use the advertisement when answering the question. Question 1. Explore how the advertisement for Quality Street uses the following elements of media language to create meanings. A. Images, 5 marks. B. Language, 5 marks. And C. Language and layout design, 5 marks. Here are my answers. 1A. The images used are somewhat typical of the 1950s. The 1950s was socially a world away from what we have today. The images could be seen as sexist as it places the man in a position of power over not one but 2 women. This would be an accurate assessment of the social context in which the advert was made, since women were seen as second-class citizens during this period in history. Furthermore, the image of Quality Street's mascot man smiling down above them indicates the company itself promotes the idea that Quality Street endorses this message explicitly. And that got the full 5 marks. Here's my answer to 1B. The language is quite clever in that alliteration is used, i.e. when words follow each other that use the same first letter. This makes the ad's copy sound playful. For instance, quote, "What a delicious dilemma." This quote is also at first glance an oxymoron. An oxymoron is when 2 words are put together which mean completely opposite things. Delicious is a positive word, whilst dilemma is a negative word. However, by putting them together, it is clear that the ad is being ironic, since it clearly suggests that this is an ideal situation for a young bachelor man to be in, since he has his pick of 2 beautiful women. And that got the full 5 marks. C. The layout and design is typical of most print adverts. Most print adverts will base its power on one striking visual image which aims to get the public's attention. In this case, it's an image of a rather smug-looking man being kissed by 2 women. This would certainly get the attention of most men who might glance upon it. The whole design is constructed to target men, not women. This is because the advert is emphasising the dubious benefit of the chocolates in seducing women. In turn, this is because chocolates are traditionally bought by men for women they are dating, although this custom has since become well and truly out of date. It is also typical in that the name of the product itself has a striking typography it uses consistently both on its packaging and its adverts. And that got the full 5 marks. Representation. 2A. Explain how social context influences magazines. Refer to Pride magazine to support your points. And here's my answer. The social context of Pride magazine can be traced to both the civil rights movement of the 1960s and the feminist movement of the 1970s. The 60s was a time in which black people fought for their rights as equals in society with white people. This was not won overnight, indeed many would see it as a fight that sadly hasn't been completely won even today. This could be why this magazine puts these social issues so explicitly within its content. Likewise, since the magazine specifically celebrates black women, it also dovetails with the advances made by women since the feminist movement. Pride is a magazine that celebrates black woman culture, and this certainly wouldn't have been achievable if not for the advances made by both the civil rights movement and the feminist movement. And that got the full 5 marks. Question 2b is based on the front cover of Pride magazine from the set products, and resource A, the front cover of Glamour magazine provided on page 7. Study resource A carefully and use both front pages when answering the question. B. Compare the representation of women in the Pride front cover and the Glamour front cover, and this is worth 25 marks. In your answer, you must consider the choices the producers have made about how to represent women, how far the representation of women is similar in the 2 front covers, and how far the representation of women is different in the 2 front covers. Here's my answer. The representation of women on both of the front covers is quite contrasting in terms of body language. The Pride front cover features the woman looking defiant and sassy, whereas the Glamour front cover features the woman looking relaxed and happy. This could be because the contrasting nature of the magazines themselves. Pride magazine, while celebrating all things black culture, even beauty, is nonetheless primarily a magazine about issues specifically relating to both the empowerment and celebration of black identity in society. By contrast, Glamour is, on the surface at least, simply about celebrating womanhood. However, whereas the producers of Pride magazine seem to have a more explicit meaning behind their representation of women, i.e. that black women must be unapologetic about finding themselves attractive, Glamour is far more superficial in how it represents women. Glamour magazine falls foul of an implicit charge of racism, as it features far more beautiful white women than beautiful black women on its covers. If black women do feature on their cover, it is the exception and not the rule. Glamour isn't interested in neither gender nor racial politics simply because it is designed by people whom are part of the ruling class, i.e. white, rich and probably upper middle class. By contrast, Pride is interested in both gender and racial politics because they are not part of the ruling class, because whilst they may be rich, they aren't white nor upper middle class. Despite all this, both magazines are reliant on images of beautiful women to sell their magazine. Pride features a relatively famous black woman, Naomi Harris, whilst Glamour features a very famous beautiful white woman, Gwyneth Paltrow. The question is, does the representation of both women change if we swapped covers? The answer is certainly yes, due to the different purposes of each magazine. Paltrow is white and therefore clearly not suitable for the cover of a magazine aimed at black women. Ironically, Harris could well appear on the front cover of Glamour given her beauty, but perhaps her body language would undermine the shallow "everything is just great" message of Glamour magazine. Harris's body language suggests she is sassy, and perhaps she is sassy through necessity rather than simply to look glamorous, like white women do when they try to look sassy on magazine front covers. Part of Harris's attraction is clearly her sense of defiant sassiness, whereas Paltrow plays it coy on her front cover because white women have to generally underplay their sense of power in order to be found attractive. White women have the luxury of not debating their role in terms of race in society, but in order to be seen as attractive to men, they generally have to represent themselves as coy and submissive. So all in all, from a political standpoint, both women could not possibly be represented as any more different to each other than they already clearly are. Nonetheless, both women are presented, as Mulvey would argue, through the male gaze. This means they are being represented as beautiful only in stereotypical terms of how a man would see beauty in a woman. In conclusion, the representations of both women suggest they have a high amount of self-esteem, but also, in gender terms, a fair amount of exploitation is involved. To some extent, both women have won gains in terms of the advancement of women as power players in society. However, there is still implicit inequality between the two women on racial grounds and also between society on gender grounds against both these women. Nonetheless, Paltrow can definitely be considered as part of the privileged few in society, but whether or not she earned that privilege is very open to debate. By contrast, it is generally true that if a black woman makes it and becomes famous, that fame was harder won than would have been the case had she been white. Section B. Exploring media industries and audiences. Answer all parts of questions 3 and 4. Media industries. Question 3A. Name the organisation that regulates film in Britain. And this is worth 1 mark. My answer, the BBFC. 3B. 12 and 12A are examples of age certificates used in the UK. Give 2 other examples of age certificates used in the UK. And this is worth 2 marks. My answer, PG and 18. Or otherwise you could use U and 15. C. Briefly explain the difference between the 12 and 12A age certificates. And this is worth 2 marks. My answer. 12A is specifically for the cinema and allows under 12s to see the film with a parent. Whereas the 12 is only for DVD and does not allow under 12s to rent or buy it at all. D. Explain why a film may be given a 12A or 12 certificate. Refer to Spectre to support your points. And this is worth 12 marks. My answer. The 12 certificate was created in 1989 in order to bridge the gap between the PG and 15 certificates. It was invented to acknowledge that, while some films may be too strong for the PG certificate, they are also too weak for the 15 certificate. The 12A was created in 2002 to acknowledge that most parents do not object to their children under 12 seeing 12 rated films. Generally, if a 12 or 12A movie has certain levels of violence, it is compensated for by a clear moral message the film is making. This is certainly true of Spectre, because the film has clearly defined roles between heroes and villains. This is of course true of U-rated films and PG-rated films as well. However, the heroes of U and PG movies do not resort to violence as a means of solving their problems like the character James Bond does. The BBFC give reasons why certain films get the certificates they do on their website. The 2 main reasons they gave Spectre 12 or the 12A certificate is because of violence and threat. The level of violence was clearly a concern for the BBFC because they state, quote, "There is a scene of torture, although there is only limited detail and the character in question is not seriously harmed." So violence in a 12 or 12A can be justified to a certain degree by the lack of detail. But the whole idea of torture is certainly not acceptable to most people for the family categories of U and PG. In conclusion, a 12 or 12A certificate is generally given to films in which violence is quite strong but made milder by the fantasy plot of the film itself. This is certainly true of Spectre, the Spider-Man movies and films much like them, and that got the full 12 marks. Audiences. 4A. Which radio station broadcasts The Archers? And this is worth 1 mark. My answer, Radio 4. B. Identify one audience for The Archers, and this is worth 1 mark. My answer, old people. C. Explain 2 ways in which The Archers is aimed at the audience you have identified, and this is worth 4 marks. And here is my answer. One way is through its sense of tradition. The programme is over 60 years old, whilst the target audience is generally aged between 40 and their death. This clearly illustrates the success of the show to old people. Another way is that it looks at modern life through old people's eyes. The characters are generally old and conservative, so they reflect the views of their target audience, whom are also old and conservative. And that got the full 4 marks. In question 4D, you will be rewarded for drawing together knowledge and understanding from across your full course of study, including different areas of the theoretical framework and media contexts. 4D. Explain why audiences listen to The Archers. Refer to the uses and gratification theory in your response. And this is worth 12 marks. And here's my answer. Uses and gratification theory is an approach to understanding why and how people actively seek out specific media to satisfy specific needs. The driving question of UGT is, why do people use media? and what do they use them for? UGT discusses how users deliberately choose media that will satisfy given needs and allows them to enhance knowledge or achieve relaxation, social interactions, companionship, diversion or escape. It could be argued that audiences listen to The Archers for any combination of these reasons. For instance, The Archers allows older people to enhance their knowledge who might find more mainstream news sources not to their liking, therefore also offering escapism. But when it does engage with current affairs, it does so through the reassuring representations of those current affairs on the show. Unlike some soap operas, episodes of The Archers portrays events taking place on the date of broadcast, allowing many topical subjects to be included. Real-life events which can be readily predicted in advance are often written into the script, such as the annual Oxford Farming Conference and the FIFA World Cup. On some occasions, scenes recorded at these events are planned and edited into episodes shortly before transmission. This allows its target audience, who might not get out as much, to keep up to date with nicer elements of what's going on in the world. Most importantly, it allows the audience to relax. The show only features mild peril and offers reassuring conclusions to most if not all of the dilemmas the characters face. The mild peril, such as characters having affairs or perhaps children causing a farmer mischief, offer the audience a pleasant diversion from their otherwise boringly predictable lives. Much like other soap operas, the show also allows the target audience to relate and sympathise with the characters, and therefore offers companionship for lonely old people. In conclusion, audiences listen to The Archers because it offers them a reassuringly traditional viewpoint on an increasingly changing world. And I got the full 12 marks. And that's it.